All right. Well, welcome to Scalable Insights Podcast, where we talk to business leaders who kick butt. We've got with us today Jeff, the producer.
How are you?
Great. And we also have with us today a person I've known and I've worked with many years ago, many moons ago, Pete Burke. Pete, why don't you, before I butcher it, I don't even know, we haven't talked in a long time.
I know.
So tell me exactly what you're doing today.
Okay. So right now, I'm in a role with Cardinal Health, which is number 15 on the Fortune 500 list. So they're a big healthcare company. And I primarily sell and put together revenue producing deals with pharmaceutical companies. I also run my own business development firm that I've run now for about 16 years, where I work with primarily companies selling into the pharmaceutical space as well as financial services.
And what's the name of that company?
The Mavington Group. And
the website? We'll get this at the end as well.
We fly below the radar.
Okay. We'll at the end, we'll put some stuff in if people want to get in touch with you, or maybe you don't want them to get in touch with you. Either way, that's cool. So tell us about, outsourced business development. You've been doing that for a long time. You used to work for us as a superstar salesperson. So talk to us about, you're, and the reason I wanted you on is you're an expert at business development, but you're also a superstar salesperson, which there aren't a lot of people that have both of those traits. I would say 95, 98% of sales reps suck at prospecting. And we've seen that because we've worked with thousands of companies. We've given them leads and we've seen what's happened. And also just from talking to business owners and sales managers that we talk to every day, and they're like, I can't get my guys to follow up. I can't get my guys to prospect. And there are a lot of reasons for that. It's a different skill set. The timing's not always right. There's a million reasons why sales reps maybe shouldn't. There's guys that think sales reps shouldn't be doing business development, but I want to have you on because you're sort of a 60-minute man. You do both really well. So talk to us about business development from your standpoint. What are, and because you've seen other sales reps, what they do. You've got a lot of experience to that working with us, and then also, where do you think? So take us through that. Like, what is the key to good business development from a salesperson's point of view? And what are the things that you've seen that hold salespeople back from business development?
Sure. Well, I think one of the things that holds people back is fear, maybe fear of rejection. But, when one door closes, another one opens at some point. So, you have to get out there and try, essentially. And when I'm mentoring younger salespeople or salespeople that have reluctancy, business development people that have reluctancy, I basically coach them to trip, if you will, and not fall. So that's how you learn. That's how you refine your, quote unquote pitch. And it doesn't necessarily, some industries will have like a one call close where you're trying to call a decision maker, sell a deal, get the deal closed. Business development in another industry might be small wins along the way to get to a bigger win at the end of that process. But the process from my perspective is oftentimes very similar in that you're trying to get to a decision maker, an internal coach, somebody that's going to help you sell the deal, an advocate for what you're doing. So maybe you're solving the problem of for a CFO with a software or something like that, and they're going to be the internal advocate to have purchasing maybe sign off on it, within a big organization, something along those lines. But getting back to your original question, I think it starts with a foundation, and I think that's what maybe is lacking in the current business development and sales environment. Folks aren't, they don't have that foundation that they can now build upon to do, say, bigger deals or get to that next level in sales. So when I started at TMR with you, I was given, FileMaker at the time, which was, Salesforce.com back in the 90s. And, it was cold calling. There wasn't a lot of email going on. It wasn't as prevalent. So it was a lot of cold calling. It was, having some sort of script or multiple scripts, depending on who you were talking to. That really helped me be comfortable with asking open-ended questions, which is how you get the prospect that you want to talk to talking more than you're talking to them, which to me is what successful business development and salespeople do, because you're trying to extract information and pain points about their business that create a situation where it's very natural and it doesn't come across as if you're trying to convince them to buy something. It's just a natural progression in the conversation. I also think people's approach and actions carry a lot of weight. Tone of voice, especially if you're on a phone call or a video call, how you show up to the meeting. Are you showing up in your pajamas on a video call? Or are you showing up in, a golf shirt or, so the presentation, if you will, all of those things factor in. It's not one, it's kind of piecing all of that together. But again, it all starts, I think, with the foundation that you're working from. And I think that's really what's, perhaps lacking with a lot of people right now.
Yeah, that's, excuse me. That's interesting that you say that, because, you're talking about the presentation and you're talking about a lot of nonverbal cues that are important. And that's interesting with Zoom because there is this big visual component to it, which I never thought about. And when you talk about the foundation, and it's interesting, like you talk about, like you're trying to get through to a key decision maker, and a lot of the things that you do, it's a long-term process. It's not like call them up and close the deal, right? So, talk us through kind of what it takes to identify those internal advocates, and what's the typical path to get to the decision maker. Because I think a lot of sales reps are very impatient. Like it's one and done, one phone call. Oh, well, I called that guy. I'm waiting for them to call me back.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So walk us through timeline of, the different milestones.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up impatient as, a characteristic or trait that, you see a lot of salespeople have. I actually view that as a positive. It's just, you need to control it in some ways. But I think if I'm impatient by nature. And I think, so, if I'm impatient with, say, my wife or my kids, it's not a good thing. or, my grandma, that's not a good thing. If I'm impatient and it's in a controlled manner that I can turn into creating a sense of urgency to progress a deal forward, then it's a very positive in, helping my company drive revenue, because I'm always want to progress things. So, there's ways to look at different characteristics of business development executives and sales executives. So when I started at TMR, my sale, if you will, was scheduling an appointment initially for our outside sales reps to then go in and do a sales presentation. So I was laser focused on achieving that, my sale, which was getting the meeting. And I figured out, I would describe it as I knew enough to execute my role effectively. So I didn't have to go too far down the lane with features and benefits of TMR and those types of things. I just needed to get to a point where I identified that something was missing, technology leads in this case, and then position it as the solution we have for them. And that would secure the meeting, and then John Koba or any of our other reps would go in and do their thing. And then eventually I progressed to where I could sell the deals. That's the foundation that I'm talking about, where you can figure out in a short form what a sales process is, how to ask open-ended questions to extract information that you can then utilize to position yourself as the solution. And then fast forward to running my own business, that definitely helped me over 16 years close business and sustain my lifestyle. And then now what I'm doing at Cardinal, working for a top 20 Fortune 500 company, and I'm currently in a sales player coach type of role. So I'm mentoring other salespeople to do the same. A lot of that foundation that I learned at TMR and early on in my career, I'm still using today, and I'm actually relaying that and sharing that with reps that are then able to build from that foundation that I'm sharing. So the foundation of it is critical. Being comfortable on the phone, being comfortable writing a professional email, follow up and follow through. Because I do agree with you. In a lot of ways, it can be a marathon, especially when you get into bigger deals, when you have to deal with master services agreements, which any large corporation is going to want. You're dealing with legal, intellectual property, all different types of things. It can be a very long sales cycle, and you really, you need to be able to manage that effectively.
Right. And so you talked about, I want to ask you about like professional email. So, sorry about that, producer Jeff. I wandered away from the mic. So just a couple of things. TMR's Technology Marketing Reports, which was a product that we had and killed it in the 90s. So talk to us about professional email. What I'm sure that's evolved. Your skills in that have evolved. Like, take us through, what do you think the key components are of a professional email?
Yeah, and I would say if you happen to speak with someone via phone or be introduced to them at a conference or something like that, you always want to use email to send a thank you note for someone's time. So that's first and foremost. I've personally experienced where I interview people for jobs. I have meetings with people where they're trying to sell me, and you have a conversation. Things are going to progress. There's no
Nothing.
Thank you note.
Nothing.
That's a big pet peeve of mine.
Yeah.
And it's really, it goes back to my overall sales philosophy. Be willing to do what the other guy is not willing to do.
Say that again.
Be willing to do what the other guy is not willing to do.
And that's it. That's how you separate yourself, because the competition is in general weak. So if you come up weak, well, then you're just lumped in with everyone else that doesn't send the thank you notes, doesn't continue to invest the time to introduce themselves and try to get through to the company. So give us an idea, like, what does it take? Like, I have a friend who has a staffing business, and he wanted to get into one of the massive cable companies, and which now today generates millions and millions in revenue every year. And I said, well, how did you get that deal? He said, Larry, it took me 242 cold calls to get my first conversation. He knew exactly. And, you know, the idea is if he did 241, he wouldn't have gotten the deal.
Right.
So let me jog your mind and talk to us about, because I think sales reps think, I'm just going to call, I'm going to leave a message, they're going to call me back, and everything's going to be great. And then a couple more steps and I'll close the deal. So why don't you elaborate on that? Like, what does it take? Like, how many calls just to get through to, I guess the starting point is finding your internal coaches, just to actually get a conversation with anyone at the company. Give us an idea of what you're willing to do that no one else is willing to do to get that conversation.
Yeah. And I have so many different stories and, you know, memories where I was trying to get into a particular company and for whatever reason just was never able to connect, you know, with the right person or a particular executive if I was trying to target them. And I think you do have to, of course, balance things. I mean, you can't just like cold call somebody, you know, constantly and like to the point of harassment.
Well, when I said 242 calls, I think that was over
time,
five or 7 years.
But I do think that there is something called being professionally persistent, which is a balance between, you know, not harassing somebody and not giving up. And that's where I think the art of sales comes into and the feel comes into it. But getting back to my point, there's been so many instances where when I finally I did connect with that individual I was targeting, and they said, "Hey, Pete, thank you so much for being professionally persistent."
This is what I tell people.
Yeah.
This is what I tell people. People are like, well, we're worried about like them getting too many phone calls from our company. Like, that's crazy.
Because a lot of times what it is, it's a timing thing.
Yeah.
It's, you have a great solution. Okay, maybe right now they don't have budget. So that equates to, you know, maybe a timing thing, you know, cyclical with their fiscal year or something along those lines. But a lot of it does come down to timing, and, you know, you want to be at the top of their list, top of their mind for when the timing is right, and do it in a professional way.
And this is what I tell people, because I know this month, one of my reps will close a deal and it's going to go down like this. They're going to say, you're the most, literally the same words, you're the most professional and persistent sales rep I've ever met. We've never talked, but every quarter, you've left me a voicemail message for the last 3 years. You got to be doing something right. I'm going to go ahead.
Right. And the other thing is it creates separation at that point between you and all the other reps. One, because you were persistent, they obviously know that you want to do business with them, that you're passionate about, you know, engaging them in some way, or at least exploring to potentially engage. The way that you carried yourself, the way you left voicemails, the way that you sent follow-up emails, the information that you shared with them, all in anticipation of speaking with them, you know, that all carries weight as well, and it gets them more comfortable with you. It earns their respect, especially like I've been in a lot of different roles where I'm selling to another salesperson or sales executive or sales leader. And so they know what it takes, you know, if they're trying to do deals on their end too. So they, you know, they're doing the same thing, but maybe to a different audience.
And they wish their sales team would do the same thing.
Exactly.
So many times I talk to sales reps where they'll get a lead and they're like, well, I called them. They didn't call back, so it's a bad lead. And you're like, you're crazy.
Right.
And I tell people, I say, look, if you what you should do is identify your target market. Like isolate that. Figure out what that is. 500, 1,000, whatever it is for your company. And then just constantly talk to them. And so my thought is just call up and say, hey, this is Larry. I sell blue widgets. Purpose of my call, I just wanted to introduce myself. I just sent you an email with information about the blue widgets. I don't know if you're in the market right now. I'll follow up with you in 3 months or 2 months or whatever it is. And then just follow up. If you follow up, you just separate it. First off, most companies won't even make that first call anymore. That's not happening. So that's separating yourself. But I always say that the first call, I don't know how you feel about this, the first call is a throwaway. It's just setting the foundation. That's just the first building block. You're not above the ground yet, right? So you almost have to have like 2 blocks before you get above ground. But you make the second call when you said you were going to do it, you're now, all of a sudden it's like, sales rep said he's going to call me in 3 months and calls me in exactly 3 months. So you do that, you've separated yourself from 80% of the competition easily, maybe 90. Third, like you call back the next quarter. And what I try to tell people is like, just leave a voicemail and send an email, a professional email. You don't have to be pushy. Just be really transparent. And then by the third phone call, now you've dusted 90, 98% of your competition. Fourth, so if you have a group of prospects, let's say you're trying to sell to 1,000 companies or in your zone, if you just do that over the course of the year, when it comes time for them to buy blue widgets, you're going to be the first person they think of.
Right.
And all it is, and for the love of God, all it is leaving a voicemail every time and sending an email with that 8 touches. So in your experience, when you're trying to get through to somebody, let's kind of break it down into a cadence. So you've got somebody on your target, you've got some intel, you're trying to get through to one of these, what you call the internal coach or advocate. How often do you call? Is it once a month? Is it once a quarter, every 2 months, every 6 weeks? Or if you're really trying to, and you said you're impatient, so I'm really anxious to hear what that cadence looks like.
Yeah. I think it is situational, depends. If I have identified intelligence from my own research, web research, information from maybe a trade publication or something like that, that is indicating, or I should say, is giving me information that would indicate this is the right individual, it's the right time, the company's well funded for, maybe the solution or service I'm selling, and it's kind of like a perfect fit, then I probably will pursue that person pretty, I'll use the word aggressively, but
and what's aggressive for you? For like a cold call, like how often you call once, when's your next call?
Yeah, it won't just be a phone call. It would actually probably be an email message. I would probably try to find someone even before I sent the email message that I have a connection, that has a connection to that individual. I think before you pick up and make a cold call or a cold email, I always try to figure out if I have some sort of connection to the individual.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Get a warm introduction or a referral, things of that nature. But let's assume that none of that is on the table. It would be an email, it would be a phone call, and then it would be some sort of cadence, probably weekly, if I'm pursuing the individual aggressively, because I know, especially if there's like a timing element to it, if it's like end of year, within the pharma business, a lot of, budgets get set at the end of the year for the following fiscal year. I may want to be, have my solution as part of that budgeting cycle. So there could be a timing element, and I'll mention that, if you're mentioning that, it'll make you, appear better business oriented and things like that. So depending on who you're talking to, they'll at least understand you have good business sense, that you're respectful, that they're probably planning their budget, that you understand their business, so on and so forth. And that all helps in building confidence and, gives them a reason to return the phone call or return the message and hear what you have to say.
And then I wanted to ask you a question, like what percentage of the time, because you've been doing this a while, how many people you have on LinkedIn?
Thousands.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so what percentage of the time do you find that you have a connection? Is 5%, 10%, 25%? I'm not trying to put a rocket on the moon, but
yeah, I mean, it's pretty low. Well, through LinkedIn, I may have a connection, but I mean, I started on LinkedIn when it launched, so a lot of my LinkedIn connections, unfortunately, they could be people I don't even know.
Right. Retired.
Or retired or what have you. But yeah, I'll always try to make a connection. It doesn't necessarily need to be through LinkedIn. If it's in a particular company and maybe I know somebody that's done business with that particular company before, I'll go to them. So it could be a peer. Even within my own company, hey, I see that your business unit has sold to them before. Do you know the procurement people? Do you know like the sphere of influence of who could potentially buy from me? Sometimes it's hard to target somebody as a coach. It might just happen by the activity that you're driving in that business, especially if the deals are larger. There could be multiple influencers, multiple, it could be buy committee type of situation. So it can get pretty complex, and that's part of being a good salesperson as well, is figuring out who those personalities are, adjusting accordingly, and then figuring out, who has the budget authority, those types of things, and what do you need to do to get to the top of their list.
Right. So it's a lot of digging. So I'm on the edge of my seat. You don't consider yourself a salesperson. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, you brought up a good point about doing research and that type of thing. I would say I spend most of my time doing research, figuring out intel, before you even pick up the phone or send the email. So a lot of it is intelligence gathering. Now, for somebody that's selling a smaller deal,
I disagree. I completely disagree. I mean, unless you're talking about something that's like $100, but if you're talking something that's 5, 10,000,
well, I think what you just mentioned about the law firm and picking up the local paper and seeing that 4 of their attorneys were just recognized for a particular award. And all those things, they're all things that you can utilize potentially. You put them in your pocket, and as you're talking with somebody, hey, somebody always likes a compliment. That's like, those are the intangibles that somebody that's just picking up the phone, that doesn't really want to be doing that. They're not going to be doing that level of research, and the conversation is going to be a different one as a result.
So I'm so glad that you said this, because while we were on the break, I talked to you about our program where we're isolating it down to like very few opportunities per month. And I'm like, look, it's not meant to bang the phone. Take your time. It's an opportunity once a day, once every other day. Do the research. And it's interesting that you say that you're doing the research, because if you do the research, it's going to help you load the gun to get the deal. It's going to make you look more professional. And it's going to be so much easier when you break the ice. And I say, look, because you can mention that when you talk, even if you're talking to the receptionist, right? Because they'll know, they'll be jazzed. But that's interesting that you spend most of your time researching. That is, that's an epiphany for me.
Well, and it's self-indulging in a way, because I have a bit of anxiety myself when I'm cold calling and things like that.
No.
Shocker.
No way.
So,
which, by the way, Pete was making 150 dials a day when you were here, at least.
At least. Yeah. I mean, it was a contest around here to see who can make the most phone calls.
I think we had 25 people in the bullpen.
Yeah. But I think when you have more information.
Yeah.
All right, good example. I didn't have any information about what this podcast was going to be like. Mm-hmm. I had a little bit of anxiety walking in here today, I'll be honest. But now that I know what it is, I feel a lot more comfortable.
Yeah.
To offset some of that anxiety when I'm about to give a presentation, to a prospective client, or pick up the phone, make a cold call, or what have you, I like to have as much information as I can about the individual, the company, the opportunity. If the company's public, I like to read their annual report, kind of really dig in. And that gives me a sense of comfort that I could have, broad intel on the company, maybe some fine-tuned points that I can hone in on. And it does make a difference. It shows that you gave more of an interest than the other guy.
Well, it gets back to you. Your objective is to destroy the competition. We're not here to just, be nice. I mean, you're gonna play fair and everything, but you want to destroy it's a competition. Like sales, business development is competition. And I always tell people it's so easy to separate yourself from the pack. Just put the effort in. But I love what you said. And if there's business leaders like owners of companies, CEOs, VPs of sales, or even salespeople, I think that this point that Pete just made is really important. And I can tell you from talking to salespeople and sales managers that there is not a lot of emphasis on this. And the beautiful thing is that if you incorporate this into your organization, which, by the way, if you're a business leader, you can't, sometimes I hear business leaders say, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. They're like, I can't get my sales reps to do this. I can't get my sales reps to do that. I can't get them to do this. Knowing that the piece of information that you got from like the book you were reading, or, because this is why I'd like to bring in people like you, because listen to the rock stars. They'll tell you what to do. They know what everyone else is doing. They know why they dominate. But the beautiful thing is that even if you started dominating your marketplace in a bigger way because you implemented this stuff, and if you went to your competitors and said, this is how I got this job from you, this is how I got this job, this is how I'm dominating you, this is how my revenues are up 30-40% this year and your revenues are down, I'm going to explain exactly what I'm going to do. I got my sales reps to do research before they made every single phone call, and I didn't take no for an answer. And if you do this, it'll bring it back to a level playing field. You could literally go into your competitors who know you're taking, because when I was in the moving business, we destroyed the competition. We destroyed them. We had a full-time inside sales team. None of them had an inside sales team. And we crushed them. We got so much business we didn't deserve. Even if I went in and told them exactly what we did to kill them, they won't change anything. They won't change a thing. That's the beauty of some of this stuff. But anyway, what I'm getting to, and maybe you can comment on this, because maybe you've worked with sales managers and folks that are in charge of revenue. So often I hear, I can't get my sales reps to do this or do that. By the way, I don't know if I told you this. There are three types of businesses that I've met: business people, businesses, salespeople. They're victims, right? It's everyone's. If they don't hit their numbers, it's someone else's fault. They don't listen to the coach, and then you got the people in the middle. I call them survivors, and then you got like the 2-3% rock stars that just crush it. And sometimes when I go to trade shows, Pete, they'll come up to me with their chest out and they'll be like nose to nose. And they'll be like, I know exactly who you sell your leads to. All my competitors, I don't care. I will destroy them every time. And they'll just literally come up and have that little conversation with me and then go out. I knew you were here. I wanted to come up and tell you that. Because they're just like, they're a bunch of, they're weak. And, but when I meet those rock stars, which is very rare, it's such a small sliver. There's no way those words would ever come out of their mouths. I can't get my team to do it. Never. Survivors will do it. Victims will definitely do it. But it was a funny story. I think I've told this before. I talked to I had this epiphany about the different types of businesses that we work with. One of my nephews was on Little League, and I said, hey, his name's Liam. I said, do you have victims on your team? Yes, Uncle Larry. If they screw the game up, who do they blame? They blame everyone else. Does the victim listen to the coach? No, Uncle Larry. I said, all right, Liam, think of the best guy on your team. Okay, that's Tommy. Okay, when Tommy makes a mistake, who does he blame? He blames himself, Uncle Larry. Does Tommy listen to the coach? Yes, Tommy listens to the coach. Like, kid's like 9 years old,
Right.
and understands that. But and that's the cool thing about this. Like, hopefully some people will take away, because it's hard to get this perspective, because your own sales team has an agenda. Like, you'll never get the truth out of them, because there's always sort of an agenda.
Yeah, you get bits and pieces.
Bits and pieces. And the most vocal people that you're going to get, if you make decisions on what tools to use and how to move forward, it's mostly going to be by the losers. Mm-hmm. And you talked about, what was it, the 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
So 80% of your sales is from 20% of the sales reps, but they're not the ones complaining and kicking their feet. So, man, we were right in the middle of talking about the fact that you spend most of your time doing research. And in the break, I was saying, sometimes I'll talk to companies and, I'll share ideas with them and like, ooh, that's a good idea. But I can't get my sales reps to do that. And what were you going to say? Like,
well, if that's the owner of the business or the sales leadership that is coming from a place of I can't,
yeah,
that's not a good leadership position.
Because you're talking about an awesome idea. Listen, and if you're listening to this and you don't immediately change the way that you look at that first call into leads, and it could be because I'll tell you, most sales reps don't take the time to do any research, guaranteed. So, and it gets back to your rule of like, do what they're not willing to do. If you spend 5 minutes, give me 5 minutes to do research on a company, I will find something interesting about their company to bring to the table. Yeah. Guaranteed, 100% of the time, right?
So you remember Kevin Boyle?
Yeah, of course.
So he used to say, can is an expression of will.
Right.
Well, can't is an expression of will. So maybe you're having some challenges that you need to work through with your team. That's different than I can't do this.
Pete, I hear it all the time. But imagine you're like a salesperson and you need to be pushed. And I'm sure when you were here, you were pushed every now and then by, who was managing you? Was it
Bill Paxson?
Bill Paxson. Because we used to push the guys like every day. And that would not be part of any conversation. I can't. And there have been times where I've had to, we were rolling out Insight PRM, the sales software, and some of the teammates were, just naysaying. And I tried to turn them around. And, I had to fire them. I'm not going to sit there and say, well, I can't get this person and that person to come on board. Now, if you're not going to come on board, I'm going to fire you because you're going to plant a seed. And thank God that I did, because it wound up taking off, and we wound up leading us to acquire 2 of our competitors and giving us a big jump. And but you have to, how do you figure out like next steps? Because you work independently, right? You work from your home office, right?
Correct.
So you don't have the team around you anymore.
Right.
How do you get new techniques, or how do you get information about like, ooh, that's a great idea, or how do you work on your craft?
Well, I personally read a lot, but then with my team at Cardinal, for example, we have routine calls. We have specifically scheduled monthly calls to talk about kind of like what we're talking about here, different tactics, different experiences, how we're utilizing intelligence, where we're sourcing intelligence from, how we're gathering that, how we're incorporating that into our sales process. And, it's amazing the different experiences that different people have, and, different lenses that they're looking at things from. I certainly don't have all the answers, and, individuals on my team, but collectively we can really put a lot of great strategies together that better the process. So that would be one of the things that we do, those monthly calls.
Yep. And, that's one of the things that for the rock stars that I've met, whether they're business leaders or sales reps, it's always you're constantly working on your craft. You're constantly looking for new ideas and new things to change the way that you do business, because you don't read stuff to do everything exactly the same way.
Right.
You're always looking for new ideas, but I really like that idea of taking the time to do the research, because I've been pushing our customers to do that, and that's going to be one of the changes that I'm getting out of this. I always get great stuff out of this. David Parry.
Yep.
He was our rep that took care of
UK.
Yeah, he was in, and it was phenomenal. And David and I from time to time talk, but we had a great podcast, and every time I talk to him, I get like these nuggets.
Little nugget, yeah.
And sometimes it's stuff that you forgot about that you used to do, and you kind of got away from, and you're like, wait, why did we stop doing that?
Yeah.
I have a quick question, if you don't mind me asking. So on the podcast previous podcast, we've talked about mentality and how important it is in a work environment to have positive mental state when in a work environment. So how does that occur, and does that affect how you work at your current job now, or is there a lot of that goes around, and how important is that in your work environment?
It's everything. Mindset's everything. Half empty, half full. It's not one of my mentors, aside from you, Larry. One of my other mentors, used to describe it as guerrilla warfare, trench warfare. It's not for everybody, and it's totally true. I mean, you have to be, you got to kiss a lot of frogs. You have to make a lot of calls, a lot of touch points.
A lot of rejection.
A lot of rejection. It's not easy, but that's why salespeople, make the big bucks, as they say.
It isn't easy, and I think that you need to surround yourself, especially from working from home. You need to surround yourself with people that are going to be positive influence. I know in my situation where I've been in relationships, and I've had to say, look, I've got to maintain a positive attitude, and I've got to, and I know of driving into work, I'll look in the mirror and I'm like, it's showtime. I've got, because the energy all comes from you.
Yeah.
And when you're selling, it's the same thing. That's all going to go through the phone. And that's super important. And how do you do that? How do you do that when you're working from a home office? Because there's a lot of people now working from a home office, because the energy that we had here was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Just off the chain, phenomenal. To the point where if there was a naysayer, I found this out years later, if somebody was saying a negative person, they would literally take them outside.
Put them in timeout.
I literally know. I found out about this in TMR. They would literally, some of the big guys that worked for us would literally take somebody outside and, tell them, no.
Paul Paxson would show them the door.
Yeah, exactly. Fists of steel. But they wouldn't rough them up or anything, but they would talk in very convincing terms that, we need a positive work environment.
Yeah.
But how do you do it, working from home by yourself?
Well, I'm used to it at this point. But I'm talking with people constantly from my company, from, different partners we have, other sales executives I'm selling intelligence with, routine phone calls with my team. So, it's just kind of the world we're in. Everybody's on, Zoom and Teams, and, we make it a point to get together now that COVID's done, pretty regularly in person. So we have a cadence set up where we get together, at least in person once a year. But I do, getting back to the mentality and the attitude. I mean, that's everything. It's not easy, but you can make it a lot of fun. And I think a lot of people that are in this and succeed, they're in it because it is challenging and they want to have challenges and succeed at those challenges. I think that's why people get into it.
But isn't, I'm sitting here listening to you, but isn't it because I know the energy that we got is because we were constantly closing deals. Like you're closing deals, you're working really hard. Like, you remember like Friday, if we didn't hit goal on Friday, nobody's going anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. So you would try to be like, hey, if we exceed goal on Thursday, because we had weekly goals.
Yeah.
Every single week we had to hit numbers. And so I think that feeds in it. The success feeds into the positive attitude. And what makes success is exactly what you said, being willing to do what everyone else isn't willing to do. And I'm going to tell you, if you're a business leader or a salesperson, sales reps will not make the calls. They won't do it. You can give them a lead. We did this research. I was going to a convention. I won't say which industry, but an industry convention, 100 of the most successful, vendors in that industry. So I had my team call and say, I'm, the office manager for a 100-person law firm, and have a budget for what you sell. Please have someone call me to sell me, right? So big deal. Only 50 out of the 100 made one phone call.
Wow.
When the phone call came in, it went to a cell phone, and our receptionist answered it and said, they were like, oh, could I speak to, John Smith? Oh, I know, I'm from XYZ company. Oh, I know he's expecting your call. That never happens, right?
Right.
Like very welcoming. Oh, Pete, I know he's expecting your call. That never happens. And you just missed him. Call back on Thursday. Only 25 out of the 50 made the second phone call. Only 12 out of the 25 made the third phone call. And by the fourth or fifth phone call, they had all given up. When the fact is that on average, it takes 10 attempts to get somebody who's interested in buying from you to get them back on the phone. And I'm sure you see this where people, it's not even a matter of closing the deal. It's after the deal and they don't call you back, right?
Yeah. And you don't know this at the time, but it's not malicious. It's not because they don't want to talk to you. They have other responsibilities
right.
and things going on.
Like, ooh, Pete called. Let me put that up on the whiteboard and make sure, So, but what I'm getting at, to your point, is if you do the smallest modicum of effort to reach out to these people and just let them know what you do, that's all you have to do. You will be light years ahead of them. And especially if you, and also, if you, for the leads that are coming into your company. Now, if I gave you that piece of information, the next logical step would be, there's a large percentage of the deals that are coming to us that maybe we're not even trying to get back in touch with them. Now, hopefully the customer calls back. But what if they don't? There's a lot of money to be made in putting a system in place that assumes the sales rep isn't going to follow up.
Right.
Assuming that your sales team is always going to be able to follow up on every call and make 5, 10, 15, 20 attempts, because an average attempt means 20 attempts, is not a winning strategy. Because sometimes the sales reps, honestly, they're trying to close $1 million deal and they know they got to be heads down for 2 weeks, right? I mean, you've been in that situation.
Things fall off. Yeah.
Things fall off. So you should have like belts and suspenders. That's another takeaway. If all you take away from this podcast is, what Pete was saying, like be willing to do, which is very little, by the way, very, very little. And, figure out how to get your sales team to do some of this stuff. Don't take no for an answer, but it's just that easy. Just reach out and talk to them and leave a voicemail, send an email, do the research. And, what are some of the other things that you think separate you from most sales reps? Like Pete was the winner of a national sales award. How many sales reps in the organization?
I'm not exactly sure.
Hundreds?
They have 60,000 employees. So.
Okay. So hundreds and hundreds of sales reps.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, and you know these guys, like what separated you from the rest of the team? Like what is it that you did that no one else was willing to do?
I don't think it's one thing in particular. I think it's, packaging up a lot of the things we talked about today. And there are certainly a laundry list that maybe that'll be the setup for our next podcast to go through some of those things. But I think first and foremost, taking action. So once you've, done the research to make you feel comfortable and you're going to now pursue this in any communication manner, phone call, email, mobile, Twitter, there's all different types of way, back when we were doing TMR, it was the phone. That was it. I mean, there's all sorts of ways that you can communicate with people, and reach out to them, which is, it's a benefit. I sometimes think I should be, utilizing more technology than I even am, but, take action, be willing to stumble, trip, not have the perfect script, and sometimes the human side of things actually makes it better. You don't say the right thing when you're on the phone call, or maybe it comes out quirky and gives the person a chuckle. Or
right.
Maybe they had the same experience that just happened to you. And
don't try to cover it up. Don't try to
it's
smooth
like
it over.
Yeah, just roll with it.
Roll with it. Yeah.
It's that type of mentality. Don't be afraid to fail, I guess, is a way that I would describe it. And then, know a bit about the person you're trying to reach as much as you can. Maybe maybe went to the same college. Mm-hmm. Maybe you live in the same town. Maybe your kids go to the same school. There's all different types of connections. And I'm not saying, call up and say, hey, our kids go to the same school, but maybe that would come out at an appropriate time during the conversation, what have you. All of those things can benefit that call and that action that you're taking. So it's those little things that I think make big differences when you stack them all up.
Yeah, because so many times it's like the slightest little thing that will close the deal for you. Like I'm a big sailor, and I was way back in the time machine. We did commercial moves. We also did residential moves. And I walked in and I saw these pictures of, their sailboat or whatever it is. And you start talking about that. And I'm like, I know I just need to go down this lane, and boom, that was it. The instant connection. But it's about being prepared. And that's the same for professional sports, right? It's about being prepared, out, exercising more than everyone else, doing drills more than anyone else. And I mean, you listen to the documentaries on Michael Jordan and, the best basketball players and football players. It's all like, I was determined that no one was going to drill. No one was going to practice more than me.
Right.
No one was going to get into the gym before me or leave after me. So, well, listen, I know we've got a hard stop here. This has been really good. I still have a million more questions, so I hope you'll please come back.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Larry.
This has been really great. Pete Burke. How
Thanks,
can people
Larry.
get in touch with you? Do you want people to get in touch with you? Maybe not. Under the radar? I don't know.
Flying under the radar.
So anyway, thank you very much, Pete. Producer Jeff, thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Had to deal with a lot of technical issues with cameras overheating.
I'll bring like those fans, and every time the camera's going like that, I'll just do it.
We had
a cool down.
Abnormally warm November day. Yeah. And
well, how about this? If and instead of directly reaching out to Pete, how about in the comments? if somebody has a question.
Yeah, if you have a
We'll
question.
put questions for Pete, and then we'll bring it up in like a future podcast
Yeah,
and say,
that's great idea. Listen, yeah, you to be able to have the time of somebody that's achieved what Pete has done, and I know Pete's work ethic and Pete's abilities and capabilities. This is a great opportunity to sort of figure out the DNA of what a successful, you're not a salesperson, researcher looks like. That's my big takeaway, is the spend more time doing research, because man, it just makes it easy, doesn't it? And fun. That makes it fun.
Yeah.
Because you're prepared of like, I've got like 10 different things I can talk to this person about.
Yeah. Get the cool nuggets.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks a lot, Pete.
Thanks, Larry.